Hi everyone and welcome. My name is Amy Gray. I'm the Media Director for the Youth Gathering. We're so glad that you're able to join us today for a day in the life of the Youth Gathering. Joining me today is Mark Kiessling, Program Director. Mark will walk us through what the daily schedule will look like for this year's gathering. And also joining us is Gonzalez. Gonzalez is the Director of Christian Education at Shepherd of the Hills Lutheran Church in Onalaska, Wisconsin. We're so excited to have Ann with us. She is a veteran adult leader. She's been to 7 gatherings, an adult leader for 5, and the last 4 she's been the primary adult leader. So Ann brings a lot of wealth and wisdom and ideas for how to actually get your group through the gathering, through the daily schedule. So Mark and Ann will dialogue back and forth and hopefully give you guys some pointers as you think about how to best prepare your group as well. A couple things as we get started here. You'll see the chat box on the left-hand side of your screen. If you have any comments or questions throughout this presentation, that's the place to ask them or place them. I'll do my best to monitor that. If there's a question that requires a larger response, I'll have Mark or Ann answer that towards the time of Q&A towards the end. But if you want to ask your question now or wait towards the time later when we'll have a Q&A, that works just fine. I think that's pretty much it. If you know of someone who's not able to attend today, this webinar is being recorded and will be available on the website following the webinar. So if you have a fellow adult leader or parent who'd be interested in watching this, they can do that at a later time. And now if you would join me in prayer. Father, we thank you for the gift of today and the ability to meet through this online platform. Thank you for the adult leaders and parents and others who are attending. Please bless them with wisdom, perseverance, and your peace as they prepare to lead your young people through the 2016 gathering experience. Thank you for Mark and Ann for their knowledge and insight and for the information they will bring to us now. Bless and strengthen them. All this we pray in your name, Jesus. Amen.
Amen. Thanks, Amy. Welcome, everyone, and again, thanks for taking the time today to be a part of this webinar, or if you're watching this on the recording, thanks for continue to prepare for the LCMS Youth Gathering and for all the support that you give to young people in your congregation and community. Certainly us in LCMS Youth Ministry, thank God for you. And certainly look forward to seeing you in New Orleans. It's hard to believe as we came into 2016 to see that calendar turn over, and it's the year of the gathering. And it's an exciting time and a great place to be, and we are so looking forward to July and our time to come together and celebrate the life we have in Christ alone and the life we have together as Lutherans, and we're really looking forward to that. Just a little bit, I'll list as a resource a little bit later about webinars that we've had in the past, if this is possibly the first time you've joined us. We have other webinars as well, or perhaps you joined us one a couple months ago, where I gave a look at the gathering schedule and also kind of some new wrinkles in 2016, including our program choices that we had. Really kind of the key things, as Amy said, I want to do differently this webinar is to look at the schedule, yes, but then also to kind of walk you through those steps of how does a congregational group, a community group, walk through the schedule and preparation, and certainly, as Amy said, to learn from Ann and the great wisdom that she has from experience, and just the great ideas and really good questions. We've been kind of sitting already online before we got started with, again, good questions that came up that we're still maybe working out. It was great to get feedback and to hear from you all as well, and ways that we can continue to communicate with you. So really looking forward to the conversation. I'm going to turn over to Ann and let her tell you a little bit about her gathering history and what is she's preparing for at Shepherd of the Hills.
Sure. So Amy was extra generous. The number she gave actually include this coming gathering, and I have been blessed over the years to learn from a number of other youth leaders who gave me their tips and tricks for taking their group to the gathering. This year we have 16 youth and 4 adults attending from my church, and then the church just down the road from us, we're attending as one large group. So they've got another 9 youth and 3 adults attending with us. We have completed a couple of major fundraisers so far. We did a dunk tank and penny war along with that over the summer. And of course, I wound up in it along with a couple other people. In the fall, we did a youth talent show and silent auction that raised about $2,000 for our gathering. So that was awesome. We have a number of other smaller fundraisers planned, but our big one that's yet to come is we're going to do a rummage sale in April. And that's a new one for us. Actually, all 3 of the big ones I just mentioned are new for us. So it'll be interesting to see how that goes. I know it'll be a lot of work, but hopefully it'll also be well worth it. We had pre-gathering or pre-registration meetings to get the information out to our group but at that time. But aside from expecting them to participate in the fall fundraiser, we have not actually had planning meetings with our group yet. 3 years ago, we started in November, and there really wasn't that much to decide that early. So our first group meeting with both churches is this coming Sunday evening. And this particular time, we'll just be doing some group building, some introductory Bible study, and then working on sending out our sponsorship letters that we're doing. So it's 2 hours, and it always goes fast.
Yeah. Great, well, thanks, Ann. I was going to just list a couple of, again, preparation tips that we have, like on the Gathering website and other resources. As Ann said, that we've got a number of resources on our website. You probably have your own from a community building standpoint. With registration materials and available on the Gathering website is our initial pre-gathering Bible study that went out with registration materials. We will be soon having a new set coming out as well. Probably be looking for that around February sometime. Getting deeper into our sub-themes of our youth gathering of the In Christ Alone, but looking at community and looking at identity and looking at humility. Certainly, you're always encouraged to keep one another in prayer. Be asking for prayer from your congregation, to keeping your young people and adult leaders in prayer as you prepare for this gathering. And be thinking of those ways, too, in which you can get congregational support, whether that's for fundraising, again, for praying for your group, giving words of encouragement to your young people. If your pastor is not going as an adult leader, or you're maybe another church worker, make sure they're involved in the process as well, that they're invited to meetings, perhaps have the opportunity to do devotions during one of the meetings, so that they're connected to the process as well. And then one way, it takes on a lot of different looks, but we talk about plan, and Ann's going to give you some really good tips on planning, but then also plan to be flexible. That's a key part of preparing for the youth gathering, and the aspects from everything from getting ready for your checking into the hotel, but then also navigating the gathering itself. And we'll continue to provide resources on the lead page of the Gathering website. I talked about the gathering being a unique experience from the standpoint of just the logistics. Certainly, probably maybe some of your young people have been to concerts or to sporting events at large stadiums, but you know how those routines go as far as it's a shorter amount of time when you're at a full day of the youth gathering. There's a lot of movement and interaction and just taking care of needs and things. Again, it's a unique experience for you to learn through it, but then also your youth participants as well. And so it's a great opportunity to prepare them for that. We have a great adult leader Facebook group that has been wonderful. Ann's a great contributor there, as well as many of you. We thank you for all your insight and questions. It is so helpful for us to really engage with you and to know what questions you have. And so if you are not a member there or a part of that group, please look that up and join. We look forward to continued conversation. And certainly, too, through this preparation, we hope that in helping you prepare for the youth gathering, you'll be more available to do what we call at the National Lutheran Youth Workers Conference, ministry in the seams. And so those times when, if hopefully we can help you plan out the logistics, that'll open up you to more conversations with your young people and be able to be available for them to have conversations in between sessions, after Bible studies, even as you're just walking to events, that you'll be able to have those meaningful conversations, encouraging one another in your faith in Christ. And so that is our prayer for you. A couple other reminders here, too. Mentioned before, there are a number of webinars that are already completed. Have topics like theological resources, registration, and program details. And also future ones coming will be about the housing. Also, eating in New Orleans. Jim Lohman will be leading one about that. We've got a meeting coming up in New Orleans here soon. He's going to be connecting with some restaurants there to give you updated information about how they'll be preparing for you to come to their city in July. And then certainly we'll have more about program details as they unfold, like workshop schedules. Just a quick reminder about the dates is that there is still plenty of time to register for the youth gathering. Whether that is your congregation that has yet to register and you're still getting names and still considering that, plenty of time. If you're still looking to add on young people, plenty of time. The next key date is March 4th. That's when the registration rate increases to $3
right. Well, the internet is a great thing these days. There's so much information out there that you can get. When you're looking into things to surround your gathering experience, of course, I don't recommend taking time out of the gathering week itself to do fun things and like that, but day before, after, whatever, great time to check out New Orleans. Sites like TripAdvisor, whatever, will give you honest reviews about people who've been there, stuff like that. Lots of resources available through the LCMS Gathering website and also on the Facebook group that Mark mentioned. Templates, things like that. You do not need to reinvent the wheel, steal each other's stuff. That's what it's all about. Our other adult leaders, so like I mentioned, this time the church down the street's going with us, so their pastor is going with us, so he's kind of taking the lead on the Bible studies, theological side of things, and I'm taking the lead on the logistical things. I'm actually kind of terrible at giving the other adult leaders specific roles, so that's something I'm working on this time. And I would encourage you to make each of your adult leaders an expert in something. Somebody who knows about all of your travel logistics. One of them who knows about all of your food stuff. God forbid something happens to your primary adult leader at the last minute. They need to know what's going on. And also, the more that you can share that burden, the more it'll make your job easier. A lot will also depend on the size of your group, okay? So if you have a group of 50, you're probably going to be subdividing your group into some kind of subsections that each of your adults has responsibility for. Whereas if you're a smaller group of maybe 10 or 12, you maybe only have a couple of leaders, you're going to be kind of functioning as a large group. And I've done both, so it's neither way is right or wrong. It's just different depending on the size of the group.
Great. A couple other upcoming pre-gathered communication pieces to be looking for. Like I mentioned before, we'll have the next set of gathering Bible studies coming up, which will take us more into the sub-themes that can be used during planning meetings that you have between now and the gathering. Then you'll be getting your housing information in early spring, and there'll be a process to that of returning that to the youth gathering office with your one-night deposit, as well as just confirming your room needs for your group. As well as certainly a key part of the information is getting out information about the speaker schedule during the day of the event, and then also general gathering guidebook information, which is helpful. For example, we have a helpline, and we will get that number out to you early so that you can get that programmed into all your participants' cell phones before you even get to New Orleans. But then also the speaker grid is important as you work to schedule your day. And so Ann gave us a really good, as we were talking about the timing of that, we're really pushing for that to be done in April because we know some of you probably have summer situations where you might have one last meeting kind of before school gets out, and then you may not get back together until right before the gathering because youth are going on vacation or they have summer jobs, other camps that are going on, and so we want to get that information to you as early as possible so you have that and available and able to put your schedule together. The other piece there that I have as well is the district event info. We'll be continuing to feed that information as the districts are coming up with their event. Certainly your individual district websites probably have that information as well. Those are, again, great opportunities to connect with other congregations in your district and area, and they're fun events. They're great connections, time of really connecting with other LCMS kids that are near them, and it's a wonderful opportunity for you and your group. And so we'll be getting out more information about that in the future, too.
Hey, could I add something about the district events? Frequently, they can plan things that are cooler and less expensive than you could do as an individual group. So it's another great reason to connect with whatever your district has going.
Great. I want to talk a little bit about travel. And so Ann's going to talk a little bit about her group's specific travel plans, and then just little things that I might add in that we're getting feedback from you all about, and just questions maybe that you have that we'll try to answer.
Sure. So we're planning to fly. It's always a great debate, drive or fly. There's specific dynamics within our group that makes flying the right choice. Right now we're scheduled to fly out of Madison, which is about 2.5 hours from us. We look around with a pretty wide net to see where we can get the best combination of times, price, and all of that. Sometimes it is worth it to drive a little further and get a nonstop flight because the more times you have to connect, the more times there are for things to go wrong. Keeping in mind, of course, that when you're traveling with a larger group, you have to be there earlier than with a small group, or if you're traveling as an individual. We typically travel down the day before and return the day after the gathering, just to give some time and in the city to check things out. We will typically do some kind of blessing in church the week or two before the gathering, just to let everybody know where we're going and bless the group for their journey. We do like to so when we fly, I try to rotate where everyone's seated and insist that they stick with those seats, just so they have the chance to get to know different people. Otherwise, you wind up with the same people always wanting to be together. And those friendships are healthy. There's nothing wrong with it. But sometimes it's not going to be your choice. Sometimes you're going to get to know somebody different that you didn't know before. Be prepared for long waits and have some things in your back pocket, either literally or mentally, for them to do. Sometimes I find travel time a great time to have them look at the schedule and things like that on the way down. On the way home, I'll frequently have them write up a little paragraph with a newsletter, because if I get it in my hand before we leave the airport, it's a lot more likely to get back to me.
Great, thanks, Dan. It pretty well touched on the things that we have, as you saw in the chat box. We'll have a commissioning service available closer to the gathering, that again, if there's a Sunday before you depart in July, that you have the opportunity again for the congregation to lift the young people in you up in prayer, and also for young people to be involved in a church service. And certainly, too, like Dan said, those opportunities for the young people to be involved in leadership and writing thank yous and communicating back to the congregation is wonderful. And as Dan said, plan to be flexible. These are probably one of these times when you want to be at the airport 2 hours ahead of schedule or close, just because you never know when travel delays are going to come. And certainly, too, the kind of fun thing, if you do have an opportunity where you are connecting, like in Dallas or Chicago or a hub, it's cool to start to see all the Lutheran kids that are starting to come together, and it's pretty neat to see that. So that's always a cool part of traveling down to New Orleans and seeing people come together. So again, there's information on the website about travel tips, but certainly I know a lot of you have been real active on the adult leader or group page or group on Facebook, and asking great questions. And certainly thanks to all of you who are willing to share what you're doing in your group and sharing your resources. And what are you planning to do for ground transportation once you get to New Orleans?
So the past two gatherings, what's worked out best for us is to connect with a private ground transportation company and actually just rent a bus or a minibus to take us to our hotel on a per person cost that generally has been cheaper than either cabs or the official shuttles. And then you don't have to worry about being broken up into groups or whatever. We just pile on one bus and go.
Great. And so at a later date, we'll have, we contract with the shuttle service that, provides our shuttling for servant events and other things. And then they also then will provide a service, again, basically on charters, that they'll get your arrival departure information, and they'll pick you up at the airport, take you to your hotel and back. So that's one option. Like Ann said, there's other just regular airport shuttles, both that you can contact on your own and make reservations, or there's a simple website that, especially maybe if you have a smaller group, that you can just buy individual tickets. They do one way, they do round trip, and then certainly cabs are available as well in New Orleans. Pretty much now, I remember 6 years ago, we were saying be prepared to have cash on hand for these things. Pretty much all of them now, from what we see, they use credit cards. It's just too easy with Square and things on cell phones that to charge credit cards. So pretty much all of them take credit card as well for payment. A little bit, if you're driving, about downtown parking, we'll continue to update the gathering website with suggestions on parking downtown. There certainly is hotel parking. There are public lots as well. We're working with the convention center on some lot space that they have, as it might be one option. We had that in 2010 as well. Certainly, too, another connection that if you're bringing a chartered bus down, sometimes the chartered bus driver stays in New Orleans. If they don't have another contract business, they'll stay there. And quite often what they'll want to do is to stay at like a suburban hotel in the area, just because there's usually complimentary parking. It's just further out of downtown. It's easier with the bus. If you're not going to be using it during the days of the event, With the internet now, you can probably find one on your own, or they can find one, that's fine, but certainly let us know, too, if we can be of assistance. Usually we get to know pretty well where there's some hotels out in Metairie or other suburbs of New Orleans where your driver could go and park the bus for your time down in New Orleans. All right, hotel check-in. Let me give Ann an opportunity to give a couple of tips as you arrive into New Orleans, into your hotel, about that process.
So I find hotel check-in to be the worst because you've just traveled, you're all tired, you're anxious to get in your rooms, and now it's another opportunity to sit around and wait. So it's generally one adult who's going to be checking you in. Make sure that you have a major credit card available for not necessarily payment. Dependent, you may want to pay with a credit card, you may want to pay with a church check, but you'll need to put down a credit card for incidentals. You may want to check with your hotel and see what kind of things can be charged to the room and turn some of those off. You don't want your kids accidentally making long-distance phone calls at hotel rates or accidentally stumbling into pay-per-view. And the other thing I would say is have something planned for your kids to do during hotel check-in. They're probably just going to be chilling out in the lobby, but to say, here, go meet some other people, here's a little, thing for you to do to encourage you to do that, or whatever. Frankly, after traveling all day, many of them will be scrambling for the nearest outlet to plug in their device, but it's always good to have more positive options than just, go plug into the Matrix. The other thing I would say is know who's going to be in what room before you ever leave for New Orleans. That makes it much easier. The hotels will need to, I think usually they need to put down specific names with specific rooms. That will also help your group. If somebody gets locked out, they can't get a key unless their name is on that room. Your hotel rooms will not necessarily be together. So just be aware of that and try to figure out who you trust to be down the hall or on a different floor and assign accordingly. Also, write down your room numbers and then write down who's in what's room. Because I've forgotten to do that before, and then you have that moment where you're like, I need to get so-and-so, and they're not answering their cell phone, and what room number were they in again? So, have somebody do that or have the room assignments already listed out, and then you can just write in the numbers after you get the room numbers.
Great, thanks, Ann. A couple of things that I listed there, too. Along with your payment, we recommend that you do not pay your hotel balance until you're on site. That's partly just so that, again, you have leverage with the hotel as far as if there is a concern with the rooms that are made available to. That's just a general hotel thing. It's not a gathering thing necessarily, but just don't pay ahead is what we kind of suggest. They come and pay once you get there. As well as, too, when you think of the fundraising timeline, we highly recommend that if you're going to fundraise or something, do the registration fee first so you can pay it by that May 4th deadline so you qualify for express registration.
Absolutely.
If you have additional fundraisers you need to do after that May date. Also, to be looking for your community life builder. Those are our yellow shirts, really key volunteers that are liaisons between you and the hotel, as well as you and kind of the communication hub of the youth gathering. There'll be information in your hotel lobby about who your CLB is. And most likely, if you check in on Saturday, your CLB will be there. On Friday, they're still in training. But on Saturday, that your CLB most likely will be in your lobby or nearby, that you'd be able to connect and get to know who that person is. An interesting tip that I had given to me after, I believe it was after the 2013 youth gathering by adult leader, was to maybe in that time that like Ann was talking about while check-ins happening, was actually they took their youth group out around the area and actually got familiar with landmarks rather than talking right, left, north, south, east, west, which is hard to sometimes connect right away, is that they got familiar with, okay, if I walk out the front door of my hotel and I go towards the CVS, I know I'm going the direction to the convention center. Or if I go out and see the Starbucks, I'm going to the Superdome, whatever it might be, and to actually get landmarks that are nearby and connect them so that they get more familiar with their space. I thought that was kind of a helpful hint, that was one of the first things that they did. Mike put it there exactly. North, south, east, west is not how New Orleans natives talk. They talk lakeside, riverside, river up, river down. So that's the cardinal directions don't necessarily work the same way way in New Orleans as they do in other cities. I do want to quickly answer, Alex, your question about the airport shuttle piece, is that the hotels in New Orleans that you'll be staying at do not have a complimentary airport shuttle. And the shuttle that I was mentioning about that will be linked to the gathering website. That is an additional fee, and it's basically a per-person fee that they charge for their shuttle service. So thanks for that question.
One other note about hotels is the taxes. We are not tax exempt in New Orleans, so it's going to be another 15%, I think, on top of the gathering rates. So just be aware of that as you're budgeting and planning ahead.
That's a good point. I want to jump now into a little bit into the gathering schedule, and again, with I'll kind of give some broad stroke things, and then Ann will give some experience from her time at the gathering. Again, a reminder that we have early registration, on-site registration from 1 to 5 on Friday at the Morial Convention Center. At the same time will be adult leader orientation sessions. We highly recommend that you send one adult leader to attend these on-site orientations. Sessions last basically a little under 30 minutes. But we have two going at the same time, so they actually start every 15 minutes, if you will. But we again highly recommend that if not if not the primary adult leader, one of the adult leaders from the group attend that orientation. We did get the registration office gave me a frequently asked question that's coming in, and that is, do primary adult leaders have to be present to register? The answer is no. Any adult leader can register your group as long as they have the registration detail letter, which you are able to print from your online account prior to coming to New Orleans. And then also, if you are not paid in full, bring along any necessary payment. And so that's just important information about registration. Going to talk now, again, the registration continues on Saturday from 8 to 6. I'm going to let Ann have some time to talk about how she generally plans her time during registration and how she facilitates with her adult leaders that process.
Sure. So we generally send one or two adult leaders over to register. We don't take the youth over. They'll just be standing around in the lobby. Although sometimes there are other people standing around the lobby that they can then interact with and meet. But we prefer to either have couple people go over and do that while we're checking into the hotel, or just have other things planned for the group to do at that time. Whether we do Friday or Saturday registration depends on arrival times from the airport. It's nice to get it out of the way on Friday. Last time around, I went with another adult leader, and we took a suitcase with us, we emptied a suitcase quick and took it over with us, because you will get all of the gathering backpacks, and they have Bibles in them, and they're heavy, but they're not really bulky. We were able to take a regular standard size suitcase on wheels and stuff them all in there, and then wheel them back to the hotel that way. And I don't remember who I got that tip from at some point. Saturday, we will probably do some sightseeing type things in New Orleans. Be aware that everybody will have the idea to go Saturday morning for beignets at Café du Monde, so I would recommend doing that at a different time. 6 years ago, that's what happened to us. Although they have a side window where you can get them to go, and it's a lot faster. Let's see. Our district event is scheduled for Friday night, so we're planning to do that. And then we as a group in the meetings to come will kind of negotiate what other events we're going to be doing. Another thing we've enjoyed doing prior to the gathering starting is going out for some kind of sit-down, slightly dress-up meal, either like Friday night, Saturday for lunch, something like that. It's just a fun way to kind of kick off the gathering, get everybody to kind of relax a little bit and actually spend some time sitting around table, getting to know each other. If you can find a local place that you want to do that at that has, New Orleans style food, what's great is if you can find a place that doesn't serve things like cheeseburgers, because then everybody's kind of forced a little bit out of their comfort zone to try something new. I definitely encourage the adult leader orientation sessions, whoever goes over to register, and then making some time to share the information that they learned there. a lot of it, if you've been before, is kind of review, but they tend to highlight the things that are different. So that's always very helpful for us. Let's see.
Great.
And then, yeah, just making time for, unpacking. Sometimes the kids will want to get in the pool, things like that. Keep in mind when you're planning the heat. It is hot and humid in New Orleans, and that will take it out of you. And a lot of restaurants and places like that we went last time around were sort of partially air conditioned. And so you are going to want to have a little bit of downtime in the schedule, especially as you're gearing up to just recover from that.
Great, thanks. And so just to reiterate what Ann said, is that, so there is no programming taking place on Saturday at the convention center. The public areas, yes, are open, out in the lobbies and things like that, but there is no program workshops and things are not taking place Saturday afternoon at the convention center. There are going to be a number of district events taking place at that time, and again, we'll get that schedule out, so that is an option for your group to be doing as you're preparing for registration and going through that process. And it asked a good question, too, about historically, sometimes we've had a servant event orientation for those going off-site to servant events. We're waiting to determine whether that is going to be necessary or not, but certainly one thing to keep in mind that you signed up for program options when you registered, or if you did sign up for a program option, is that certainly there will be a touch-base opportunity there during registration to just check details. If you've got extra questions, we'll have people there to assist with those questions as well, just so that you can have that connection. Another FAQ that has come up that the registration office asked me to push on was that there's been questions about what if we arrive after 6 o'clock? And that might be either that's just the flight that you're able to get. It might be because of a flight delay that day or in transportation, whatever it might be, is that know that late arrivals will be accommodated so you're able to attend the opening mass event. We'll have a temporary check-in at the Dome, and then one of your adult leaders, again, will have to officially register your group, so to get the Bibles and the backpacks and everything on Sunday morning at the convention center. And the details on the location for the Superdome, we'll probably have a specific date that we'll ask you to go in, and then also the check-in on Sunday, which is probably going to be in the gathering office, will be made available at a later date.
But I would say don't plan to get there after 6. If at all possible, that should be for emergencies. You'll
Correct, yes.
be in such better shape if you have the chance to get your stuff and not have to hit the ground running, so to speak.
Yes, thank you, Ann. Good point. Absolutely. That would be, again, for just those travel emergencies that pop up. But rest assured, the gathering office is there to assist you with that, and we will get you taken care of. Yes, Alicia, that is correct. That you would not want to bring your luggage to the Dome, that you want to check into the hotel and then come over to the mass event. Correct. Looking now, just again, I'm just going to quickly look at the gathering schedule for that evening Saturday so that Ann can talk more about kind of the logistics of the evening time. 7:30, the doors open at the Superdome. 8:30, the mass event begins. And then following, we have nightlife at hotels and other locations downtown. There's opportunities for community group time as well. And then really we schedule midnight to be the end of the program day on Saturday evening. And
all right.
Talk a little bit about their expectations, kind of from the Dome events time through bedtime.
Sure. So first thing I need to say is we expect everyone in our group to be at the Dome for the mass event, just like we expect everyone to attend Bible study in the morning. When you get to the Dome, there will be a lot of people outside waiting to go in. If you want your entire group to sit in a block of seats together, you should plan to be there no later than the doors open time. If you come in later, there are seats, but you maybe need to be prepared to split up. We try to get dinner before we go over to the Dome. There are some food options available there, but logistically it gets kind of challenging with kids going everywhere, and it is kind of expensive and not terribly filling. When we're at the Dome, we stay together as a group, always with an adult. Within the Dome itself, they're allowed to, go to the bathroom or whatever, usually I ask them to take a friend at that point. We find that community group time at the end of the night does not work so well for us. Everybody is either fried or they are wanting to go off and talk to people or do other things. But at the end of the day, we do a check-in with whatever adult leader they're with last, kind of highs, lows for the day, what they learned. It just helps solidify what they heard and did and learned that day. There are a lot of nightlife program options. Be aware that the really popular ones can fill. So make sure to set expectations appropriately for that. We generally have 3 options after the mass event. If there's a mass event plus, they have the option to stay for that. They have the option to go back to the hotel and go to sleep, or we'll try to pick out one nightlife event as a group that if they want to go to a nightlife, they can go to that. And when I say we pick out, I really mean the kids pick out. Whatever. They want to go learn salsa dancing, that's cool. I don't know if that's going to be an option this time, but it was a previous time. And then we do set expectations about going to sleep. This is not a lock-in. This is a week of intense spiritual growth, and they need their sleep, even if they think they don't. A challenge is that a lot of them will be coming to you kind of on summer schedule, where they've been staying up until 2 a.m. and then sleeping until noon. And so kind of adjusting them that, hey, you need to go to bed earlier because we're going to be up at 8 can be a bit of a challenge sometimes. It is good, especially the more adult leaders you have, to find a time to check in with each other. Different adults will observe different trends in your group, make sure that they know what's coming up the next day, that kind of stuff. It doesn't need to be long, but it is a good thing.
Hey, thanks, Ann. It's certainly one thing that we have gotten a lot of great feedback from you all about that whole thing of rest, and about even as we try to design the gathering schedule to certainly provide for appropriate activity, but then also appropriate rest time, is that we've had groups come to us more and more and say a difference that they noticed at like an event was when they intentionally made sure they got rest at night. Or, for example, when you might be familiar with the gathering history, when we went to more of a track system and maybe there wasn't as much walking that took place, is that when they weren't as tired, they were much willing, you as the adult leader, to be able to handle the situations that might come up, but then also just felt better about the experience. And so that's something that certainly we take to heart, is to make sure we have that opportunity to rest and to prepare for the next day.
And keep in mind, one thing. Keep in mind that whatever boundaries you set for your teens on rest, you are going to be getting less rest than them. So sometimes that's part of the issue too, is that they need to be resting so that you can get the rest that you need so that you can do your work.
Absolutely. I do want to answer, there's some questions about seating at the Dome. One, I do like see some of the people responding that they take the opportunity to sit at different spots during the Dome. I think it gives a different perspective of seeing the number of people that are there and just the things that are happening inside the space, which is really cool to see. This question about assigned seating, we actually did bridge that conversation with the Dome, looking at an option of doing that. We've decided not to go from a standpoint of like seat-by-seat assigned seating, something that certainly we'll keep in and investigating, but we are coming up with some plans to alleviate some of the rush when the doors open, and we'll be laying out those plans as we continue to work with the Dome on that. But there is not a seat-for-seat assigned to your group, so it's open seating, especially off the floor, is that would be an open seating area. And we'll continue to communicate about that with details. Going into, going to look again at kind of Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday, as they kind of mirror each other with slight differences, but I'm just going to go briefly through the schedule, and then Ann will give kind of, again, her management of her group. Again, reminded on Sunday morning, we have the 5K run walk. Got some exciting news that we're getting pretty close, I think, to having our route in downtown New Orleans. And so that'll be around the general Poitras Street area, so close to hotels, close to our facilities, close to get ready for the activities that'll be happening throughout the day, whether it's servant event deployment or whether it's getting ready for Bible study in the morning. One note that I have there, too, that's a new piece from the last time that we had a webinar, certainly is that we are prepared to have information about our worship rehearsal time. That is for our young people who, if you've got someone who wants to be a part of the choir or wind symphony, that will be part of the divine service on Wednesday morning, is that their rehearsals are going to be in the morning. And one change from the last time is we would try to get a rehearsal in on Saturday. And the feedback we got is just too much stress with trying to get into the hotel and registered into the opening mass event, so we're not having that Saturday rehearsal, but we'll have one on Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday morning, and then, of course, an early one on Wednesday. That will be before the actual event. The rehearsal will be at the Dome. Your group, if you have experience with this, again, groups do it differently, but usually like maybe one adult will walk those young people who take part in that piece to the Dome, and then wait during the rehearsal, and then they're there to get them back to Bible study. One thing that we're going to do is we will have transportation from the Dome to the locations of the Bible study so that they can quickly move and get to the Bible study in the morning and meet up with the rest of your group. So whether that's in the hotels that are hosting Bible study or whether that's to the convention center, we will provide transportation from the Dome to that location. And really, we strongly encourage, we get amazing feedback from the young people who participate in that choir and wind symphony, that if you've got talented musicians and singers in your church group, really encourage them to do that. It's a great opportunity to get to connect with some of our leaders in the Concordia University system and get to meet other great musicians, and it's a wonderful experience for them. That application will soon be available online on the Gathering website, that you'll be able to get that downloaded, start that process, and then also enter information for those who are interested. Also in the morning, certainly too, there'll be opportunities in your hotel for you to check in with your CLB. There's the time for breakfast and community group time, and then servant event deployment. Again, we're looking at 2 locations this year, depending on where your hotel is, either at the Morial Convention Center or at the Superdome. Quickly talk about Bible studies. We're going to have a standalone Bible study time in the morning to talk about the various sub-themes of the gathering, to get deeper into Philippians and into God's Word together. Those that take place in the hotels, which again are some of our larger hotels that will communicate with you after you have your assignment, will be at 9:30, because following the Bible study, you have to walk to the convention center for the 12 o'clock workshop session. Then the Bible study that takes place at the Bible study will be at 10 o'clock. And so then the walk will obviously be on the front end to get there for a 10 o'clock Bible study in some of our larger rooms there at the convention center. So that's, again, to start the morning, time together in God's Word. Experiential Learning Floor opens at 11 o'clock, and then we have our sessions for interest centers and concerts and academies at noon, 2, and 4. Certainly have time in there for lunch and things that Ann will talk about. And then basically that 4 o'clock session ends at 5:15. And then 6 o'clock is when the experiential learning floor closes as well. And essentially things at the convention center close as we move our attention to the supper time and then also to Dome events.
All right, so last gathering we found it useful to meet for our community group time in the mornings. But the morning time last time, the start to the morning was a little bit later. So I'm not sure yet whether we're going to meet for community group time in the morning or try to fit it in over lunch or dinner or something like that. The other thing is, as our group grows, we have to break down into smaller groups so that we can have effective discussions. So last time around we had 15 kids go, we had 3 adult leaders. So every morning they met with the same 5 students and talked through their plans for the day and the materials that we had for them. Definitely have a plan for when you're going to do it before you get there. The amount of mental stress you're under trying to manage the logistics of the group leaves very little brain power for trying to figure things out. Obviously, you're going to go in with a plan. You might change the plan, but it's better to already have a plan for when you're going to meet every day to kind of debrief and go over things for the next day. That will also help you kids make better decisions about how to use their time during the gathering itself. It's really sad when I come across some of my own kids sitting in the convention center playing on their phone. Well, what are you doing? Well, I'm bored. Really? There's a whole floor of sports experiential stuff. There's, booths from everywhere and lots of speakers and concerts, and you're bored. So helping them to plan ahead and be realistic is helpful. We typically request them to go to 2 of the sessions a day. Of course, it depends on if we already have something we have to do as a group, off-site or serve event, interest center, something like that. But in general, that's our expectation, that they attend 2 of the 3 centers. If, for example, the first day they're all only attending concerts, I might increase my expectations for the next day that one of them will actually be a speaker or something like that. But in general, we allow them to choose their own interest centers, and typically I've found that they do a pretty good job with that. We do expect them to travel in groups of 3 or more. So they'll need to kind of talk with each other ahead of time and decide who's going where. And some kids are going to go to sessions because that's what they're interested in. Some kids are going to go because that's where their friends are going. And it's okay. God works through both kinds. We like to, meals, lunch. There are food vendors available in the convention center. There is also a mall right next to the convention center that has a food court. Both of those options, just so you have expectations, are going to be jam-packed. There's 25,000 people trying to get lunch about the same time. So if you can adjust your lunch time either a little bit earlier or a little bit later, that will help. Last time around, we actually went to Sam's Club before the week started, got lunch ingredients, packed our lunches, and had them in our backpacks. That worked really well for us. Whether it's going to work this time with the hotel we're at and the distance and that kind of thing, it's yet to be determined. I've also heard of groups having lunch delivered to the convention center, and then you just show up at a certain time, pick up your lunch, and be on your way. That will allow your group more time for interacting with the gathering experience rather than standing in line for food. It will also give them more energy for the gathering experience, because standing in line for half an hour is exhausting. And I have stood in half-hour long lines for lunch before. Within the convention center itself, they are allowed to, like I said, be in a group of 3. They don't necessarily have to have an adult leader with them. Check-in times during the day depends a lot on the group and how wise they've been with their time. Sometimes they may not have to check in person. They may just have to text us and let us know what's going on and where they've been, and then we'll have a meeting point at the end of the day to go for dinner. Excuse me, and get to the mass event. As an adult, I may need time to step away. Like I said, you're doing more than what they're doing with coordinating things behind the scenes. So there are adult rest areas. I definitely encourage people to take advantage of those. Sometimes if you attended a Concordia or something like that, there is a reunion or something like that, and I always encourage people to take advantage of those opportunities to rest and recharge themselves. There are adult leader sessions that can be helpful, and that's another opportunity to grow as a youth minister, and that of course necessitates that you can't be with your group at all times. For supper, last time around, we had dinner delivered most nights to our hotel. We did Jimmy John's and pizza and Chinese, different things like that. A lot of the restaurants in New Orleans would deliver, and so that was a good thing for our group. Whether that will work this time depends a lot on where our hotel is. But again, that was a great opportunity to kind of take a break in the middle of the day. We weren't having to walk all over the place to go find food. And the other thing that can be helpful, depending on the size of your group, is getting a party room, not even just a reservation, but some restaurants have a separate room where they will do groups, and those groups can be as small as, say, 30 at some places. And so interacting with different restaurants and getting that set up ahead of time is great. Again, the more you can set up ahead of time, the better your gathering experience is going to be. Last time around, like I said, we did the delivery. I made the mistake of not setting that up ahead of time. And so I was up every night trying to figure out, okay, where are we going to go? Where are we going to get delivered tomorrow?
Great. And again, we'll have a future webinar about that with more details about locations and things, and talk about also some new additions in downtown New Orleans, like supermarkets and things, so that you know what is available for you once you get into New Orleans. The other piece I do want to clarify about what Ann said about lunches and having food delivered is probably some of those groups were having it delivered to like the hotel that was maybe near the convention center.
Oh, okay.
At the convention center is that you cannot have like pizza delivered and things like that into the doors, because that's where their concession stands and things have the right to sell the food. So just a clarification there that, again, if you got a hotel that's close by, you might be within quick distance to do that. But just at the convention center, they'd probably tell you they can't deliver there if you were to call them and ask for pizza or delivery.
And also there was a note on the sidebar that was a good thing about extended delivery times. Yes, if you just call up, during the gathering and say, hey, I want some pizza delivered, they may quote you a 2-hour wait time. And that's why it's good ahead of time to arrange with those whatever restaurants you want to use to say, we want pizza delivered at 5 o'clock next Tuesday, and then they can kind of build it into their schedule.
Great. I just want to make some really quick notes about this is in one of the previous webinars, and we'll talk about it more later too, is just to think about that support piece. Support one another while you're there. Encourage one another as adult leaders. Be praying for one another. Be great information on the Gathering app. That'll be available for download even before you get to New Orleans, so you can get familiar with that. We can have a helpline which connects you to our event base, which is kind of the information hub for the youth gathering. Can help you with a lot of anything from just questions about the schedule to also if you have emergencies that you need assistance with. Also, there's adult rest area, as Ann said, oasis opportunities for you to explore, and also to meet some other vendors and things that want to connect with you as an adult leader, then also to certainly rest. And then also look for your community light builders, the yellow shirts. They're at information booths and other places. You'll be able to connect and get information and support you in your work. And as Ann said too, about the trainings and workshops that are available. Make sure you take advantage of those that are, they'll be in a specific space right in the middle of the other workshops, so you're not far from your young people. But you'll be able to go and hear speakers on a variety of topics and encourage you in your vocations as you return home as well. Moving on and then to the gathering schedule again, evening of Sunday through Tuesday, very similar to Saturday that we already looked at. 7:30 with the doors opening at the Dome. Mass event begins at 8:30. Following the mass event on Sunday and Monday are Mass Event Plus, and so those again are additional activities that take place in the Dome where you are welcome to stay. For again, acts that will have their musicians and things that'll take place. So we're finalizing that schedule. That'll be taking place, and we'll be able to announce that pretty soon. We do not have that on Tuesday night, as we'll be getting set up for worship on Wednesday morning. So again, it's just Sunday and Monday. And then again, nightlife activities taking place in the evening in hotels and also in other places in downtown New Orleans, and opportunities for community group time as well. And again, we have the midnight listed as the end of the program day. I don't know, Ann, if there's anything more that you want to say as far as when you think about as the days continue on. I know you already kind of touched on that a little bit about the preparation that you do, but I don't know if you have anything else to add about that.
There's always going to be things that you wanted to do that you didn't get to do. But the more you can plan ahead and do the things that are really at the top of your list on Sunday or Monday, that will give you the opportunity to pick up anything that you missed on Tuesday. Sometimes you'll find that you want to go to a session and it's full, so you're going to have to try again later, and that's always a challenge. Yes, but planning ahead as much as possible is a good thing, but then also being flexible with it. And keep in mind, by Tuesday, you're probably going to be more tired. And so if there's things that are high energy, you may want to do them earlier in the week and leave some of the others for later in the week.
Great. And then just talk about Wednesday, July 20th. Again, the schedule is different. We have the closing divine service. The doors open at 8:30 a.m. Service is at 9:30. There will be kind of again, concluding remarks and things following the benediction and closing hymn, so stay around for that. And then we list 12 noon as the conclusion of the youth gathering itself. Some districts will have district events in the afternoon. And then we kind of list, if you're booking flights, to be thinking about 3 p.m. or later, just so that you have the opportunity to take in the worship service. You won't want to miss that, and then be able to get out to the airport. And certainly there's a lot going on that morning, too, with getting checked out of your hotel, and that's something I certainly wanted Ann to speak to. One suggestion that came up, I know, at National is that one of our district coordinators was talking about what she does with her group. She puts on her extra day at the end, just because you have so many things going on of trying to get out of the hotel that they just add a day onto the end, and so they're probably going to go home on Thursday. Just something to think about if you have not booked your travel plans yet. But Ann, if you want to talk a little bit about that last day.
Sure. Yeah. Typically, we fly home on Thursday as well, simply because, as you said, by the time you try to get out of your hotel and get on a flight, you're going to be getting home super late. Now, if you're taking a bus or whatever, the logistics are a little bit different. Keep in mind that most hotels, all the hotels I've ever been in for a gathering, will hold your luggage. Even after you've checked out, they'll usually have a room or something like that available. Or they might give you late checkout on one of your rooms and let everybody from your group put their luggage in that room, and then you can pick it up after you're done. Again, we'll probably have a private bus that will book to the airport and all of that. Wednesday, we'll probably have some fun cultural activities that we'll do out in the city, and then take off Thursday morning. It is a good thing. You're exhausted, but it is really good to kind of do some wrap-up sessions about what people learned, get their elevator speech ready. People are going to come home and people are going to say, "How was the National Youth Gathering?" And if all they hear is, "Great," well, that's good. It's good that people know that they had a great time. But if they can summarize something they learned, either as a witness to family and friends or as an encouragement to your congregation that they learned something, that's a good thing. But I try not to have too much mental activity packed into those last hours, because you are a little bit fried. We will have a weekend following the gathering where the kids will attend one of the services that we have and report on the gathering and how they learned through whatever. We have a challenge getting our group back together after we return. Everybody's scattered with sports and whatever. So we haven't really done a lot with that. But even September isn't too late to throw a reunion for your group. Obviously, if you have college kids, they're going to be gone, but it is okay to get back together and kind of relive some of those memories. Like I said, we do report in person to our congregation as well as in writing. Depending on the size of your group, that will depend on that. I mentioned very early on our sponsor letters. One of the things we do also is send postcards from the gathering to all of our sponsors with a word of thanks. That can be a little bit challenging. A lot of kids aren't really used to writing notes like that these days, but it's really meaningful. We just pick up some like New Orleans postcards and have them do that. I have all of the labels pre-printed so that all they have to do is write the actual note, and then I also make sure to get postcard stamps ahead of time, because you can't find postcard stamps just at a general store. You have to actually visit a post office usually.
Great. Thank you so much. Kind of open up here. There's probably maybe some questions that are in the chat box to be answered, but certainly want to give opportunities for you to answer other questions or ask other questions you might have at this time.
Yeah, we have a list of a couple ones that have just come throughout the course of the conversation. A while back, Alex asked if you need to bring a physical copy of the registration form, or if you can just show it on your phone when you go through the registration process.
Traditionally, you've had to have a physical letter to be available, and right now that's where I'll leave the answer. If we can come up through our system to change that, we'll communicate that at a later time, but just be prepared that you have to have the physical letter.
Can I add one thing with that? There's a lot of paperwork to keep track of, just with hotel reservations and airlines and whatever. I have found it helpful to 3-hole punch everything and put it in a binder.
Great.
A question was asked about hotel assignments, just how hotels are assigned and where you're located in that process.
Sure. So when you registered, you were asked to pick your preference of zones that were available, and so we're taking that data now and working through that. And so taking a number of things into consideration from, again, what your request was, and looking at the space that we have in the hotels, going back to maybe some hotels where requests are made to see if we can get larger blocks of rooms, and to accommodate the request that came from you all as participants, and then basically becomes kind of this matrixing piece with a lot of spreadsheets, a lot of work to get groups of the right size into the right hotel to where we're maximizing our blocks at these hotel properties. So that's the kind of the process, and certainly keep that in your prayers as the registration office is doing that now in these coming months.
And finally, any word about stadium rules that we'll have to follow at dome events, including not bringing in spotter poles or anything like that?
Sure. So if we get that information from the dome, I saw a little bit of conversation about NFL. Generally, the dome usually has different rules than, say, during an NFL game. They're slightly different, but certainly the dome will have its own rules as well. And as we know those, we will communicate them to you as early as possible, and again, certainly on a regular basis so that you know what those rules are. Certainly be surprised, or be prepared, I should say. This goes back to, being prepared for things at youth gatherings. The last couple of gatherings, we've had bag checks, and of course, everyone has a backpack. So that takes a little bit of time to do that. But that's part of the process now in the world in which we live, and we're very glad that they do that. So you just have to be prepared for those things, and certainly we will communicate any kind of regulations that come to us from the dome connected to the facilities themselves or the city as well. Great question.
Anything else coming through that we haven't addressed? I think that those were the questions that were still unanswered from earlier.
Yeah, about that too. If you hadn't joined one of the earlier webinars, I probably didn't say this at the beginning because I took out the map slide, is that all our hotel properties are walkable to the dome and the convention center and to gathering activities. If you go to an off-site servant event, we provide transportation then from, again, either the dome or the convention center, wherever your deployment location may be.
But you may want to encourage your group to be walking more before you get down there. Walking distance is a mile, and the convention center itself is a mile long. So you're easily walking 5 to 8 miles a day.
And have good shoes. Good, no open-toed
flip-flops
shoes.
will not cut it.
Yeah, right, no flip-flops.
So there's a question about bus passes for using bus passes in New Orleans.
Yeah, and NJ, you might be asking that to the broader audience. I think that's probably a question. I put it on the Facebook page, Facebook group, see who did it. I know we had people who did it. People did it in San Antonio as well. They had a great pass where basically you could ride all day. And so just to save some steps, if they were going to go in the San Antonio context, going to the market, or if their hotel was a little further out, and one time they wanted to save some steps, they were jumping on the buses and bringing that to the convention center. So it's certainly something to look into. It's pretty inexpensive, especially as you plan out, like Ann said, if you're going to do a special meal somewhere or something like that, it might be a good time to save some steps where you might be going. So it's worthwhile to look into for your group if you or one of your adult leaders have time to do that. But I would ask that maybe on the Facebook group.
As we wrap up here, District Coordinator Douglas, well, yes. As we wrap up here, Mike asked about when this recording will be live. It'll be up by tomorrow. Again, it'll be found on the Gathering website under the webinar webpage. Thank you, Ann and Mark, and especially for all of your tips and insights. Really been helpful. I think my biggest takeaways were plan and then plan to be flexible. And so hopefully this information isn't too overwhelming, but gives you an opportunity to take it in, to breathe, process it, and prepare for a great gathering experience. So again, also on the Gathering website under that webinar page, you'll see other upcoming gathering-related webinars. I think there's about one a month from here on out. So as you're able to join and tune in, we look forward to connecting with you there. Otherwise, have a great rest of your day, and blessings as you continue to prepare.
God bless.
God bless. Thank you.